The 7th episode of Season 2 of House of the Dragon, episode The Red Sowing, was recently released. As there weren't as many new costumes in this episode, in this video I'll be counting down the top 5 most compelling costumes, highlighting any callbacks to Season 1 and Game of Thrones. For this video and the season at large, I'm seeking costumes that not only stand out visually, but also contribute to the storytelling and narrative. Warning, there will be spoilers for all of Season 1 and episodes 1 through 7 of Season 2. But I won't touch on any Fire and Blood spoilers, so please refrain from leaving those in the comments below. Thank you. Now let's get on with the countdown. Number 5, Alwyn Ensemble. Alf is a dragon seed who becomes a dragon rider after claiming Silver Wing. With the exception of Hugh and Kat, I haven't focused on the costumes worn by the Loreborn. Throughout the season, Alf wears a costume that is made up of multiple layers, reflecting his background as a barfly and a storyteller who earns strengths with his tales. Alf's costume features a coat made from a nubby, brown cloth with wide bands of trim. These bands are then embroidered with designs that resemble plants or flowers, however, they also kind of look like a dragon. The coat's silhouette is reminiscent of the late 17th century, similar to a collarless coat of khaki brown cloth from Shetland housed in the National Museums of Scotland, and a man's coat from 1660 to 1675 housed at the Palais Galleria. His coat seems too fine for someone of Alf's station, which raises questions about how he acquired it. Perhaps he won it in a bet or inherited it. Underneath, Alf wears a brown-colored waistcoat with bobble buttons, a blue-gray shirt, a shift, and trousers. He also sports a wide leather belt and a leather pouch. Now, while his costume is beautifully crafted, it is heavily broken down, indicating wear and tear. Now, in the books, Alf is called Alf the White, but in the show, his hair is more salt and pepper, contrasting with the traditional Targaryen white as seen on Hugh. Number 4, Rhaenyra Grey Dress. Rhaenyra appears at the top of the episode in a striking charcoal gray coat dress while confronting Adam of Hall after he claims sea smoke. Her costume was featured in the teaser, and I mentioned then that it reminded me of the later season costumes worn by Daenerys Targaryen in Game of Thrones. Similar to Daenerys, who leaned into a charcoal gray palette upon arriving in Dragonstone before shifting to black, Rhaenyra's costume echoes this transition. Rhaenyra's coat dress has a Japanese-style silhouette with strong shoulders adorned with dragon scale beading. The fabric and cut give it a robe-like feel, differing from her more structured looks. The coat dress resembles the long-line doublets worn by the men of Westeros and appears to be paired with pants and tall boots. This practical choice is indicative of Daenerys, who always wore pants under her gowns for a quick getaway. Additionally, the costume has slits for ease of riding her dragon and adds a dynamic touch as it flaps in the wind. To provide some contrast, there is a dark red undershirt that enhances the overall look. Number 3, Allison Hooded Coat Dress. Allison goes camping in the Kingswood dressed in a hooded coat dress and undergown that evokes the feel of a fairy tale or an episode of Once Upon a Time. Recently, there has been some discussion about Allison's transition into blues, whether teal, cyan, or blue-green, as she becomes increasingly conflicted about her actions that led to the outbreak of war. Alongside this shift from greens to blues, the decoration on her gowns has incorporated silver, the metal associated with Rhaenyra's faction. This can be seen in the embroidery and fasteners on her gown. Interestingly, while the fasteners are decorative, the costumes are actually closed with hooks and eyes. The embroidery features a silver vine-like detail along with some bauble or pom-pom-like textures. The overgown is cut with princess seams and made from a brocade in a deeper cyan blue, while the undergown is a lighter shade. And when Allison strips down, she wears a simple off-white shift made from a jacquard fabric with a leaf motif. Similar to a shift she wore in a previous episode, it's laced in the back. A foundation garment is detectable, which appears to be a modern nude bodysuit or wetsuit, something that is likely worn for the actor Olivia Cooke's comfort and to keep her warm. Number 2, Jane Eyre WTF gown. One of the biggest disappointments from the episode is that we didn't get to see a close-up shot of Jane Eyre at the gates of the Vale in her divine gown and cape. Fortunately, HBO released a still where we can all admire Jane in a true "we're not worthy" moment. In the episode, we do get some close-ups of Jane's creamy cape, which is a clear homage to the strange but beautiful cartridge-pleated capes worn by Lysa Arryn and Robin Arryn in Game of Thrones. The shape of her cape collar also echoes Lysa's costumes. Jane's gown is stunning, with a gorgeous silhouette featuring long, wing-like hanging sleeves that evoke the House Arryn falcon sigil. The gown is in the blue shade of their house color. While the exact fabric is uncertain, it might be velvet based on her previous costumes. A close-up reveals a subtle motif of their house heraldry. The fitted undersleeves and the lining of the billowy sleeves are an icy blue. In Game of Thrones, the fabrics worn by House Arryn often feature the house motif. Costume designer Caroline McCall has mentioned that fabrics from some characters, such as Simon Strong, were dyed before cutting and then distressed, as we see here at the hem of Jane's gown. Before we get to the most compelling costume of the episode, here are a few honorable mentions. Alan of Hull. Alan received a promotion, and his new look is a sort of mini-me version of Corlys's gambeson. Now, while I understand the use of marine blue, it has become somewhat repetitive. This is especially noticeable since Corlys only had one new costume this season, despite being one of the wealthiest men in Westeros. If the design team didn't want to create a new costume for him, they could have reused one of his costumes from Season 1, as they did earlier in the season. House Mallister. Throughout this season, I've highlighted some of the vassal houses, and House Mallister of Seaguard deserves an honorable mention. According to A Song of Ice and Fire wiki, the coat of arms is purple, but technically it is indigo, which is a deep reddish blue. However, the show has changed it to blue, established in Season 1 during Viserys' tourney to celebrate his son's birth. Their blazon is a silver eagle, prominently displayed on the front of their gambesons. Lady Mallister, meanwhile, wears a fur-lined asymmetrical cape, which I believe is a nod to the one worn by Arya Stark in Game of Thrones. Oscar Tully. I featured Oscar Tully, now Lord Paramount of the Riverlands, in a previous episode, but we didn't get a good look at his full costume. He's had a glow-up with a lovely new gorget that might be bronze, replacing the simple hardened leather gorget from earlier. The leather scales on his shoulders are a callback to the Tully armor worn in Game of Thrones. Oscar now wears a red quilted leather gambeson reflecting the color from the Tully sigil. And he looks adorable in a bassinet while riding his horse in his travels to Harrenhal. And check out his great sword in this behind-the-scenes picture, which is almost as tall as he is. If you enjoy this kind of content, consider subscribing to my channel, or if you'd like to support the channel on a regular basis, I've set up a Patreon with tiers that offer perks. You can find the link in my description. And now, the most compelling costume in the episode. Number 1, Rhaenyra red gown and cloak. I don't know about you, but all season we've been eagerly waiting to see a showstopper costume, and here it finally is. It ticks all the boxes: regal, queenly, imposing, elegant, and commanding. First things first, the scene featuring Rhaenyra turning to face the dragon seeds with Vermithor behind her was very intentional. It's a callback to the posters from Season 1 where a young Rhaenyra stands in front of Syrax wearing her fealty gown. Although Rhaenyra did wear the red undergown in a previous episode, Regency, the scenes were either too dark or shot close up, making it difficult to see. Here are some behind-the-scenes pictures to give you a clearer idea of what it looks like. While Rhaenyra's wardrobe palette typically consists of various shades of red, this is a true red color. The overpiece, reminiscent of a houppelande, features strong shoulders, a cape-like back, and long hanging sleeves. Initially, I thought it was a different fabric because it appears darker in the show. However, it is possible that they used the reverse side or cut it on reverse of the straight grain, as fabrics like velvet can look darker due to the nap. They might have also dyed the overgown a slightly darker hue, as I suspect the fabric was custom dyed. If you zoom in, you'll notice a blood vein detail on both the overgown and undergown. I can't tell if this detail is woven or hand-painted. Bela also had this detail on her dress. At first glance, I thought the silver embellishments on her costumes were embroidery, but they're actually bugle beads creating the swirling detail. And I joked on Twitter that the treble clef motif proves that Raina is a music lover. The beading is also repeated on her belt. And finally, you might have noticed this in the show, but Raina is wearing a silver hair ornament on her elaborate braid. Daenerys Targaryen also wore a silver hair ornament when she arrived on Dragonstone. But I'm curious about the idea behind Rhaenyra's multiple braids. As you might know, Dany's braids in Game of Thrones represented her successful battles, similar to the Dothraki tradition. As a final thought, I think there's a bit of fan service here. In Game of Thrones, aside from one simple short dress, we never saw Daenerys in a red gown. I am paraphrasing here, but series costume designer Michelle Clapton stated that dressing Dany in red would leave them nowhere to go, so they only hinted at red. This is something I and many viewers fundamentally disagreed with. Additionally, Clapton mentioned that she never gave Dany a crown, opting for a silver chain of intent instead because she hadn't earned the crown. That argument never worked for me. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the costumes in episode 7 or the season so far. I'll have more House of the Dragon content coming your way over the next few weeks. Thank you for spending time with me. I'll see you in the next video.